This is a CBS News special report. I'm Major Garrett in Washington. Good evening, everyone. It's Election Day, and polls just closed in New Jersey. But importantly, we have a projection to share with you on this election night. In Virginia, we have a race call. Projected winner, Democratic nominee, former member of Congress, Abigail Spanberger. You see 54.5% over the Republican nominee and Lieutenant Governor Winsome Earle-Sears. In New Jersey, that race, lean Mikey Sherrill, the Democratic nominee for governor, over Republican Jack Ciattarelli. Let's get straight to CBS News congressional correspondent Nicole Killian, who is at Democratic Representative Spanberger's campaign headquarters in Richmond. Nicole.
Well, as you can hear, Major, it is a very jubilant atmosphere. You're hearing Stevie Wonder being played right now, but just a few seconds ago, there were several eruptions of cheers from the crowd as this race was called for Abigail Spanberger. And not only because she is emerging as the victor tonight, but also because she's making history as the first female governor ever in the Commonwealth. So there is a lot of excitement here in this room, and I want to break down very quickly how she did it. Our exit polling shows that she made double-digit gains with women voters, specifically on this issue of the economy, which resonated with a lot of them. She also made additional strides with African-American voters and younger voters under 30. Now, specifically on this issue of the economy, that is a message that Spanberger really honed in on throughout her campaign, but especially in these closing weeks and months, really trying to make this a referendum on the Trump agenda. And so, you know, from the DOGE cuts to tariffs to the ongoing government shutdown, Spanberger really hammered in on those issues, considering that you have hundreds of thousands of federal workers who live here in the state of Virginia. Her closing message was pledging to end what she said was the chaos coming out of Washington. That message appearing to resonate with voters tonight as she now is poised to become the next governor of the Commonwealth. Major.
Nicole, let me ask you, there was some sense among Republicans a couple of weeks ago that this race was tightening, but this race does not appear at all tight. An easy victory for Abigail Spanberger. Among Democrats in Virginia, is that a surprise on the upside?
Well, you know, she had consistently led in the polls, even though, you know, I spoke with Lieutenant Governor Winsome Earle-Sears, her Republican opponent, who said that, you know, she has run hard races before and that she was going to do all that she could. But at the end of the day, she did not secure the endorsement of President Trump. Now, whether that was a factor in her defeat tonight remains to be seen, but certainly is a factor. We saw on the Spanberger side, of course, former President Barack Obama come in just this past weekend to try to drum up support for Spanberger. I was there at that rally, which was packed with people. So there was definitely an effort on the part of Democrats to try to do whatever they could to flip this seat.
Nicole Killian in Richmond, thank you so very much. I want to go now to CBS News Elections and Surveys Director Anthony Salvanto, who has information on results in Virginia and a sort of pathway to victory for Abigail Spanberger. Anthony?
Evening, Major. Well, that pathway goes through very traditional Democratic areas, places where Democrats have stumbled a little bit in the past, but Spanberger made up that ground. I'm going to show you this map. Virginia, Republican voting counties in red so far, Democrats in blue. Now, you don't see a lot of blue, but this is where the votes are, up here in Northern Virginia. In particular, there's one, D.C. suburbs. I'm going to point out this one, Loudoun County, right? Just as a good example. Big, big margin for Spanberger there. When we look back and we compare it, let's say, to 21, when the Democrats lost the governor's race, right? Look how much better she did than the candidate, the Democratic candidate who lost that race, Terry McAuliffe. Right, almost 10 points better in that key county, suburban county. Now, the other part of this, if I go back, is when I say that's where the votes are, I'm going to take the state and I'm going to take these blue areas and I'm going to turn it on its side. And what you're going to see is the higher bars here mean more votes there. That's what I mean by more votes. So Democrats like to run up the score with turnout in places where they do well, and, of course, do better than the last time. And that, in a very short summary, is why I'm able to call this race right now, Major.
And, Anthony, that thing you just said, your ability to call the race, we love to share with our audience how we build that process, what you look at Is there any way, shape, or form, looking at the data, that this could be anything other than the call we've made?
No, it's not, because what you see is that in county after county, in all the places where you would expect a Democrat who is doing well to do well, and you compare that to past races, it is a consistent pattern. And one of the things we're going to talk about all night is patterns. I might show you a county or two as an example, but it's the consistency. Does she run better in this case in place after place where Democrats in the past have fallen short? Even though that was a large size win, that's a much better percentage. Do that again and again, you trend towards a victory, and then we call the race, Major.
Anthony and I have a very long history with our magic board with all the data. He's there by himself tonight. I admire him for that. All throughout this evening, we're going to have information. New Jersey, Virginia, New York City, and elsewhere with granular data that Anthony will bring to you. I look forward to that. CBS News congressional correspondent Caitlin Huey-Burns at the desk with me, going through the exit polls. Caitlin, what do we know?
Well, as we know, exit polls are a huge way that we can figure out how voters are voting the way that they are. So CBS News interviews people here on Election Day and also when they're casting their ballots early. So that gives us a pretty full picture of what the electorate is feeling. In Virginia especially, we've seen Democrats grow their share of the electorate, and that is what is leading to this victory, presumed victory for Spanberger tonight. Take a look at some of these numbers, and you'll see on your screen here. The percentage of people voting Democratic compared to 4 years ago is up 12 points among women. It's up among voters 18 to 44. It's up among suburban voters and critically independent voters. So you see on that graphic those big jumps from 4 years ago when Republican Glenn Youngkin won, and now what we see with a Democratic share of the vote. I also want to show you what has been part of the Trump coalition, Republican coalition lately. That is people with no college degree, and this is especially white women. You're looking at Earle-Sears is leading among that group, but still obviously not enough to make up that gap. Look at this comparison versus 4 years ago. In 2021, the percentage voting Democratic, about 25% white women with no college degree, 74% for the Republican. This time around, Spanberger's actually gained some ground among that group, 37% this time compared to 61%. So really, women voters in Virginia have been making up the gap here. I mean, that 12-point spread is really something to behold and something that Democrats were hoping in the last election they'll be looking at this data point for future ones.
And on that white women, no college degree, there has to be an affordability component in that in Virginia. And if we see that in New Jersey and New York, that could be something that thematically plays through this entire evening.
And that's what we've seen in exit polls across all of these races we're watching tonight. Affordability, the economy, still top of mind for voters in all of these races.
Caitlin Huey-Burns, brilliant stuff. Thank you so much. I want to go to New Jersey. CBS News characterizes the governor's race there as lean Democratic. Jerika Duncan is with Republican Jack Ciattarelli's campaign. Jerika.
How's it going, Major? You can see behind me a number of his supporters just started trickling in the last couple of minutes here. The people I'm speaking to who are here in support of Ciattarelli obviously believe he is the person for the job. Remember, this is his third time running for governor, and he did get pretty close the last time he ran against Phil Murphy. As for the Democratic side, Mikey Sherrill, she's talked a lot about affordability. Both candidates really have. She just tweeted out a message a couple of minutes ago saying the polls have closed and no matter the result tonight, I am filled with gratitude. But you heard on both sides of this campaign a message of I'm going to do something about the utility crisis. I'm going to do something about property taxes. I'm going to improve education. How they're going to do it and their strategy was definitely different. But it really comes down to what the voters believe. Do they believe that Jack Ciattarelli is the guy for the job, or do they believe that Mikey Sherrill will come through on her promises? And that really is what election night is all about. I was at a rally this past weekend. Those in support of Mikey Sherrill, a 71-year-old woman, Karen Hilton, said it was time for change, and she believed that change was for Mikey Sherrill. But then you talk to people here, you talk to other voters that I spoke to today at polling places, and they said that they weren't happy with the direction that New Jersey was headed and really believed, they said they believed in Jack Ciattarelli, talking about him being a New Jersey guy, which he promoted throughout the campaign. But of course, we will see what happens Someone from his camp said that he is definitely feeling confident tonight, although, again, I know that CBS right now is characterizing this as leaning blue for the Democrat. Major?
Tarika, let me ask you about the Trump effect in New Jersey. Unlike Virginia, where Winsome Earle-Sears, the Republican nominee lieutenant governor, never got the endorsement of President Trump, Jack Ciattarelli did, not just once but twice, and a couple of tele-events where the president phoned in or was brought in via virtual video and endorsed Ciattarelli and was at least enthusiastic about that. How did that, in any way, shape, or form, play in that race?
I think it does play in the race for some voters. Of course, those local issues that I talked about that people are feeling with their utility costs or with property taxes. But then when you really dig deep, there are people who said, I don't like what's happening with the SNAP benefits. I don't like this idea of the government shutdown. I don't like what's happening with immigration. And they were talking more about those national issues. I even saw some people with MAGA hats on supporting President Trump. So you have a combination of people that are obviously thinking about this from a national standpoint, but then you have people that are really talking about what they're feeling in the now and believing that the candidate, of course, that they're supporting is the one that can make things better.
Tarika Duncan at the Ciattarelli headquarters in New Jersey, thank you so very much. I have a great team with me here at the desk. CBS News Chief Washington Analyst Robert Costa. Tell me what your thoughts about New Jersey, Virginia, and whatever themes we might be getting to see examples of playing out this evening.
Well, it's great to be with you, Major. Great to be with you, Weija, Caitlin. And election night, it's always going to be tough for New Jersey Republicans. It's easier when they got a Democrat in the White House who they can run against. Ciattarelli, you just talked about his endorsements from President Trump. In this kind of dynamic in a blue-purple state, really a blue state in New Jersey, he doesn't have that candidate, that president he can run against. I remember Chris Christie in 2009. He could run against President Barack Obama. Ciattarelli, yes, if you go on the New Jersey boardwalk, maybe you think it's a Trump state. I mean, Trump flags everywhere. But New Jersey boardwalk is not New Jersey. A lot of government employees, a lot of people from New York. It's a liberal state. So Ciattarelli, he ran a pretty good campaign against Phil Murphy. Ran a good campaign this time. Hard race for him to win there. Abigail Spanberger, I think the big takeaway is, think about 4 years ago tonight. Glenn Youngkin was going to be the future of the Republican Party when he won that gubernatorial race in Virginia. Now it's going to a centrist Democrat from the Richmond area. Youngkin has not been able to translate his version of republicanism into a victory 4 years later.
Not for his lieutenant governor, and not when he was putting everything he could, his reputation, fundraising, on the table in legislative races. House of Delegates and the state Senate. Lost that.
He gambled. It's almost like Governor Newsom's gambling tonight. You gamble in some of these state races. If Newsom wins tonight in California, I think that's the big Proposition 50. Proposition 50, I think, is the biggest race of the night. Because if the California Democrats can win 5 additional seats next year, puts President Trump's presidency on the line. Weija Jiang is with me, senior White House correspondent. The White House has, like I said, leaned into New Jersey to a certain degree. No in-person rallies, kept Virginia and Winsome Earle-Sears at arm's length.
They sure did, Major. It is great to be with you all. And as you pointed out already, the president did not explicitly endorse her, right? And even though he talked about Winsome Earle-Sears and said, you know, the Republican is the strongest candidate, and said that, you know, you can't vote for Democrats because everything is on the line, he did not say her name during any of these events, during tele-rallies last night, which he had one for Virginia. He formally endorsed the Republican candidate for the Attorney General. But again, he did not do so for her, because if there's one thing that all three of you know in covering Donald Trump, is that Donald Trump never forgets. And this is a president who can work with his previous foes. But when there is a fresh feud, he remembers that. And it was in November 2022 that she went after Trump. She called him a liability. She said that leaders know when to step aside, and said it is time to move on from Trump. And so this is something that he remembers, and perhaps a big reason why he did not offer that formal endorsement.
Polls are still open in New York City, where many eyes, maybe all eyes there, are on the New York City mayor race between Democratic nominee Zohran Mamdani, independent former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, and the Republican nominee Curtis Sliwa. Ed O'Keefe is at Mamdani headquarters. Ed, what is the atmosphere? What is Because this word has been around the Mamdani campaign almost from the start. What is the vibe?
The vibes are pretty good right now, Major. This is the Paramount, or the Brooklyn Paramount Theater, just down the street from the Barclays Center, across the street from Junior's Cheesecake. You should check that out if you ever have a chance. And they're not letting in his supporters just yet because, as you said, polls don't close here for another 45 minutes. And this is a campaign that very much is of the attitude that you have to be out there on the streets getting voters to the polls up until the last minute. That's why he decided, Zohran Mamdani did this morning, to vote on Election Day instead of voting early. And they expect that thousands of the volunteers that have been helping out across the city will be here tonight to celebrate a victory. But by how much? Does he get over 50% in a three-way race? All of that yet to be seen. There are going to be a lot of questions about whether the Democratic Party moving forward should be taking its cues from a 34-year-old with just 6 years of political experience who's a self-described Democratic socialist. A few things to keep in mind. First of all, in New York, there are multiple minor parties on the ballot with which you can appear as a candidate. Mamdani tonight appears for two parties, the Democratic Party, what they call here in New York the Working Families Party, which is a far more liberal, sort of union-based party that has endorsed for governor and in other local races. The Mamdani campaign telling reporters today that Mamdani cast his ballot for himself on the Working Families Party line, which was seen by some as another slap at the Democratic Party establishment. But in New York, a vote is a vote for you no matter which party you voted for on that ballot, something people will seize on here. As to whether or not there is something more to be learned, we talked to some of his supporters about this. And in the words of one woman we heard from, she said, look, we don't need carbon copies of Zohran around the country, she said, but we need leaders who have some of the things that he has, which is an ability to hear what the voters need and want and an ability to respond to that. In other words, he's been talking about dollars and cents this entire campaign. That's what propelled him into the lead. And looking at our exit polls tonight in these key races, what's the number one issue of concern, Major? But inflation, the economy, the cost of things. That's what he's talked about. That's why many believe he's going to win big tonight.
Ed, you made a mention of Juniors. I am such a frequent customer to Juniors. They have practically given me a platinum credit card, but that's another issue for another day. Our coverage will continue in less than 1 hour here on CBS News 24/7 at 9 o'clock Eastern. This has been a CBS News Special Report. I'm Major Garrett in Washington. We'll see you in a bit.